Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah ma ba'd. This question is about laughing in Salat. Does laughing nullify the Salat? Now, before we get into this, there's a few things that I want to discuss. And this actually shows us the importance of seeking knowledge. Ibn Mundir, and after him Ibn Qudama, and after him Ibn Taymiyyah, and before him Imam al-Nawawi. I mean, throughout the ages, the ulama have said that this is an issue of ijma', that there is no difference of opinion when it comes to the ruling on talking and laughing in Salat. I'm just stopping here because this actually teaches us something which is really important when it comes to understanding our religion. There are certain areas that the ulama have differed in. There is flexibility on that. It's not a free-for-all, but there is flexibility and tolerance. But then there are some issues which are issues of ijma', and there are many issues which are issues of ijma'. And in issues of ijma', there is no flexibility in this. A person must stick to what the scholars have said. So if a person says to you tomorrow, talking is not so bad, you can speak. Music is not so bad, it's halal. All of these things have already been dealt with. The ulama have said that this is the ruling and there is no discussion on it beyond this point. And this is why the scholars of usul have said it is really important for us to understand differences of opinion, because that will help you understand the Sharia a great deal, and it will help you from deviating from the correct way. Because a person can now, we're seeing this in the world that we live in. People are taking issues where there is already ijma' on as issue for debate, as issue for discussion. This is the issue where the scholars have ijma' on. Also, as an introductory to this topic, it's important for us to understand that the scholars have said that when it comes to the issue of salat, you cannot take it lightly. To the point that some of the Hanafi scholars have said, if a person prays and he talks and he laughs on purpose, as we will see later on, or perhaps we've just mentioned it now, this is the view of the Hanafis. This is not correct because the hadith on it is daif. But they have said that if a person laughs in salat, then the salat is broken, but so is the wudu. And there is a hadith that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah said that there is an agreement that the scholars have said that this hadith is daif and it's muttarib, that the Prophet ﷺ has been attributed to say, "Man dahika minkum fi salat," anyone who laughs from you from salat, فَلْيَتَوَدَّأْ ثُمَّ لَا يَعُودْ or لَا يَعِدْ الصَّلَاةِ, that he should repeat the salat again. This has been reported by Daraqutni and others, and the ulama have said that there are many faults in this hadith. Therefore, the ulama have said that the hadith is not a hadith. But the Hanafis have taken it and they have said, no, not only does your salah become invalid, but your wudu becomes invalid. And if the person is doing this, taking salah lightly, then this is kufr. This is kufr, because the person has taken an issue of iman and he's making a mockery of it. So that's the second thing I want to point out, which is the issue of salah. You learning your salah and learning it and practicing it correctly and establishing it in the most perfect and possible way that you can, then this is an issue of iman. And if a person is lax on it, or he's taking it for granted, he's making a mockery of it, he's not preserving it, and the ulama have said that this is an issue which can take a person outside the fold of Islam. His iman is taken away from him. Another issue, before we talk about the discussion here, there is no disagreement between the ulama, is that it is not permissible for a person to pray whilst he is distracted. He must remove all distractions. And it is not permissible for a person to distract another while he is praying. So this question actually comes in the context of a person having a child and the child making him laugh. Does the salah become invalid because he is laughing? The child is innocent. The child has not done anything wrong, can't do anything wrong. However, the parent has to make sure, to the best of his ability, that there are no distractions. But the child has distracted in this scenario, but quite often, sometimes, adults distract others whilst they're praying. They might talk to them, they might even do things which are worse. This is impermissible, and it is not allowed, and it is haram, and it is a sin. And the person should not be praying in that state in the first place. The third or the fourth introductory point that I wanted to mention here is the importance of khushu'. That if a person is now talking in the salah and laughing in the salah and perhaps even eating and drinking in the salah, then where's the khushu'? What's he saying? Who is he saying it to? So it's very important for a person to take heed of these things that we have mentioned. Now, as you have just heard, we're going to talk about talking in the salat, but the ulama have then said, and this is known as al-qiyas al-awla, which is that if this applies to talking, then anything which is similar to human actions also applies. So laughing, eating, drinking, etc. If talking is impermissible, then all of these become impermissible as well because of the process of al-qiyas, and one of the types of qiyas, al-qiyas al-awla. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah. And the tafsir of this, the ulama have said that you have been commanded to stand in obedience. Bis-sukut, Ibn Kathir has said, bis-sukut, meaning standing in silence. Standing meaning not in silence that you don't say anything, but in the sense that you are not talking to one another. You are standing in obedience and reciting and making dhikr of Allah and making supplication towards Him, subhanahu. Zayd ibn Arqam, radiallahu anh, he actually tells us that, so there's two reasons. This is not a sabab al-nuzul. There are two reasons why this ayah was revealed. Zayd ibn Arqam, he says, كُنَّا نَتَكَلَّمْ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. We used to be able to talk in salah. So the person is standing in salah, and he used to be able to talk to the person next to him. He was allowed to do that. This was something which was permissible. But when this ayah was revealed, we were then commanded to be quiet. This is the first reason as to why this has. Second sabab al-nuzul is the hadith. I'm pretty sure you've heard this hadith before. This is in Sahih Muslim. That Muawiyah ibn Hakam, he walks into the salat. Now remember, we've just said he's not to blame here because they used to talk to one another. So people were praying. And Muawiyah ibn Hakam walks into the jama'ah. He's walked into the masjid, the people are praying. And a person sneezes. So Muawiyah ibn Hakam, he says in the hadith, he's narrating the hadith, he says, فَقُلْتُ يَرْحَمُكُ اللَّهِ. I said to this person who was praying, يَرْحَمُكُ اللَّهِ. So the people started looking at me with their eyes. Obviously they're standing, they're facing the qibla, and they're looking. And some of them started beating their hands, and some of them started beating their thighs. But I just carried on talking, and, because it was normal for me at that point. When the Prophet ﷺ finished, he said, إِنَّ هَذِهِ الصَّلَاةِ, surely this salah, لَا يَسْلَ فِيهَا شَيْءٌ مِّن كَلَامِ النَّاسِ. It is not befitting that we have any kind of speech, from ordinary speech, from the people within it. إِنَّمَا هِيَ التَّسْبِيحِ وَالتَّكْبِيرِ وَقِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. Surely the salah is tasbih, subhanallah, takbir, Allahu Akbar, and reciting the Qur'an. This is also now evidence to say that talking in the salah is not valid, and it could invalidate the prayer, and it's not something which is allowed at all. Then we have another hadith. Now this is in Sahih Bukhari, that a man enters upon the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he issues the greeting of salam. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ is praying. People have now greeted him with salam. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ doesn't respond to the salam. Again, they're not to blame because this is something which used to be normal. When he finished, Sahih Bukhari, he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّ فِي الصَّلَاةِ لَشُغْلًا. Surely in the salah you are preoccupied, meaning you shouldn't be even responding to the salam. You're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to speak, you're not allowed to do any of these things. Right. What if a person speaks out of necessity or out of jahl? Now this is connected to our discussion. I know we're talking about laughing, but this is important. If the person speaks out of necessity, and if the person speaks if there is a need, then this is allowed according to that necessity and need. And this is found in the hadith of Dhul Yadayn, hadith of Abu Hurairah. This is well known as the hadith of Dhul Yadayn. This is Sahih Bukhari and others. Messenger of Allah ﷺ made taslim in either the Dhuhr prayer or the Asr prayer after 2 rak'at. So Dhul Yadayn, so now they're in Salat, right? Because the Salat doesn't finish after 2, it finishes after 4. So Dhul Yadayn stands up and he says, "O Messenger of Allah, have you forgotten, or has the Salah become reduced?" So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "Neither." And he's talking back to him. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ continued with the 2 rak'at which were remaining, and then he did the sujood al-sahw. Imam al-Nawawi, in commentary on this, he says, if a person was to speak laysa min jins as-salat, something which is outside of the salah, in kana kathiran abdalaha bila khilaf. If he has talked a lot, like we have said, from the conditions, it has to be slight and it has to be according to need. If the person has talked a lot, then the salah is invalid. If a person has spoken unnecessarily, then the salah is invalid. وَإِنْ كَانَ قَلِيلًا لَمْ يَبْتُلَهَا بِلَا خِلَافٍ. If it is something which is slight, now again, this is to our discussion, it's very important this, then it doesn't break the salah because it is something either done out of need or it is something which is light. There's a narration from, I think Awza'i. Awza'i was asked if a person speaks in salah or he has added to the salah, does that nullify the salah? And he says something like, if a person says, innaha, no, this is the issue. Awza'i was asked about a person who is reciting aloud in Salat al-Asr. So Awza'i said, if a person says, innaha Salat al-Asr, then it doesn't nullify it. Innaha Salat al-Asr, 3 words, then it doesn't nullify the salah. Why? Because it is slight and it is done because of need. So this is what the Imam al-Nawawi is saying here, rahimahullah as well. Okay, so now how is that related to our discussion? Number 1, the ulama have said, if talking is haram, then laughing and eating and drinking is haram. Because the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has clearly said that the salah has a preoccupation in it. I mean, you're preoccupied. And if you salah shugla, in another hadith, إن هذه الصلاة لا يشلى فيها شيء من كلام الناس. This is not befitting that a person does these ordinary actions within the salat. So laughing is one of them. But, this is a very big but. Remember we just talked about when it comes to talking, if it is slight, this is what the ulama have said when it comes to laughing. If the person has laughed in the salat a great deal, then as we have said before, Ibn Mundhir and others have said that this is the issue of ijma', the salat is invalid. But if a person just laughs like this, ha, or they are shaking but no voice, no sound actually comes out, then the ulama have said, and this is the view of the Shafi'i and others from the madhahib as well, that the salah is invalid. And no, he says, if the person has made a sound, man bana minhu harfan, meaning 2 syllables, ha ha, or something more than that, ha 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 ha, then the salah is invalid. Why? Because this resembles speech. But if a person goes, ha, then this doesn't resemble speech, it resembles coughing or something which has overcome him. Therefore, when it comes to the discussion on what is a lot of speech and what is not a lot of speech, that also applies to laughing. Therefore, if it has multiple syllables, ha, 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 salah is invalid. But if a person just says, ha, and he's overcome, like we have said in the introduction, a person must be removing these distractions, etc. But let's just say he's taken all those precautions, but it still happened, then what seems to be the correct view, and this is the view of the Shafi'i, but I think this is the view across the madhahib also, just generally speaking, is that it doesn't break the salah if it is something which is slight, meaning 1 syllable. But if there are multiple syllables, then it nullifies the salat. And Nawawi goes on, وَقَالَ أَكْثَرُ الْعُلَمَاء, and the majority of the ulama, لَا بَأْسَ بِالتَّبَسُّمِ, if a person is smiling, then that doesn't nullify the salah. Why? Because this is not speech. This takes the same ruling of signaling and body language, etc. And those are not speech, so they don't nullify the salah. Yes, there is an issue of khushu and distraction, but it doesn't nullify the salat. So now what we are doing is we're making an analogy between speech and laughing. وَإِنْ غَلَبَهُ الدَّهِقُ, but if he is laughing a great deal, وَلَمْ يَقُعْ عَلَى دَفْئِهِ, and he's not able to repel it, فَلَا تُبْتِلَ الصَّلَاةُ بِهِ إِنْ كَانَ يَسِيرًا, if it is something which is like, ha, he's tried to repel the laughing and it's just come out of him, ha, that doesn't nullify the salah. Why? Because it doesn't resemble speech. وَتُبْتِلْ بِهِ إِنْ كَانَ كَثِيرًا, if there are many sounds, syllables coming out of him, then this nullifies the salat. And this for me seems to be the correct view. And like I said, I don't think there isn't any difference of opinion that speech and laughing nullifies the salah. Ijma'. Does it break the wudu? No. But does it break the salah? Yes. But what is considered as laughing? This is the issue. So this is what we've just answered now. If there is a lot of laughing that's going on, it nullifies it. And if it isn't a lot, then it doesn't nullify it. And again, now this could be a spiral of questions, isn't it? So now a person can say, well, what's a lot of laughing? What's a lot of speaking? A lot of speaking is according to need and according to necessity. And Imam al-Nawawi, he says, وَالضَّابِطْ فِي الْقِلَّةِ وَالْكَثْرَةِ al-urf. If a person sees you and he thinks this guy's chatting, he's not praying, then khalas, that's described as being something which is plentiful. And the same then applies to laughing. But if a person says, now this happened in the haram once, the imam made a mistake and he said, na'am, na'am, and he continued praying. The reason why this is allowed is because this is slight speech. And the same then would apply to laughing. All of this goes back to the urf and the customs of what is normally accepted as being speech or not speech. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us of those who establish the salah with khushu', and He makes us of the muflihun, and He makes us of the mu'minun, and He makes us of the firdaus al-warithun. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله على محمد.